We're here to bring a new type of news show.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Bringing news just for you. It's Tuesday, April 7th here in Seoul. I'm Isujin, and this is News Generation. And joining us for the first time to represent Gen Z is Kyle.
Pleasure to be here.
And also Cheska's with us.
Happy Tuesday, everyone!
Good to have you. And both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. So we've made it to the second day of the work week, and today we're diving into something a little more personal, what we turn to when we feel uncertain or need a bit of guidance. But before we get into that, let's meet our guest for today. So it's actually his first time joining us in the studio, and he's here to represent Gen Z, as you can tell by the name tag, and to share his perspective. So Kyle, it's great to have you on for the first time. So before we start, can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Of course. Hello, guys. My name is Kyle. Hello, Cheska. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm from South Korea. I work in content creation and live commerce, and more than anything, I love talking about things happening around us in our society. I guess you can say I'm a little bit of a yapper, so let's have some fun today.
Look forward to hearing you yap today.
Yeah.
So today we are diving into something a little more personal. So when faced with a big decision, where do you turn? For some, it's careful planning or advice from friends and family. But for others, it can mean looking beyond the everyday, seeking guidance from religion or even traditional spiritual practices. So have you ever relied on something like fortune telling to help you make an important choice, Kyle?
I wouldn't say I completely rely on fortune telling, but my family and I do check it for fun sometimes. Especially we check the saju thing, the Korean fortune telling.
That's big in Korea.
Yes, it's so big every now and then. And when you actually really get into it, it's actually really fun. Sometimes I agree with the results, other times I don't. For example, my mom checked my saju the other day and said I have a strong kwanun, meaning I was born with the destiny to become a government official and have a stable career. But in reality, I work as a freelancer and I'm not even belong to any organization.
Very far from it.
Yeah, definitely a gap between that and my actual life. But on the other hand, it also says I have a 사람복, which means I'm lucky with people. And that part feels actually true. Because I get to work with a lot of great people, and I'm even here with wonderful people, amazing people like you guys. So my saju was definitely right. So for me, fortune telling doesn't really give me direct answers for what to do, but it shows what perspective to focus on and what kind of mindset to have in life. So I can say it helps.
You know what? I think it's better to have luck with people connections.
Yeah.
So you worked out.
Yeah, I think that's the best luck.
It is. I do agree. So what about you, Cheska?
So we talked about the saju and the fortune telling of Korea. So I do it for fun with friends, but I think when it comes to really big decisions, I try to turn more inward. So I actually do meditate, but it's not a religious practice. It's more of a mental and spiritual practice to sort of be aligned with what I'm thinking. But beyond that, I'm actually baptized as a Catholic. So it's my birth faith, and my name, Cheska, is actually my baptized name, Francesca.
Right.
Yes. So I definitely live by the Catholic faith, and I do pray. And I think prayer for me is sort of seeking wisdom and clarity in terms of where my heart is when I'm trying to make a decision. But when it comes to actually making the decision, I try to rely more on myself and sort of my experiences. So I would say it's a balance of both religion and my own independent thinking. Yeah.
And the fact that you are religious makes me really interested to hear your perspective later on.
Yes, I'm very fascinated about today's topic, by the way. Yeah.
So, I mean, this is really interesting. It sounds like a blend of personal reflection and faith rather than relying on just one source. And I think a lot of people today can relate to that balance of looking inward while still holding on to spiritual beliefs. And that's why we're going to talk more about this. But first, let's take a look at the screen. AI has already become a part of many aspects of our daily lives. And now it's stepping into a space once thought to be deeply human, religion. Today on News Generation, we take a closer look at the rise of cyber confessionals, how religious communities are responding, and whether it's appropriate to bring AI into such a deeply personal and spiritual realm. Just as we saw in the video, AI is now moving beyond convenience into the deeply personal, even spiritual spaces. It's no longer just assisting our daily routines, it's beginning to shape how people seek meaning and guidance. So let's take a closer look at this growing trend. So how is AI now entering the realm of religion, Kyle?
I think we should look at two different functions of religion separately. One is faith in higher being, which is the God, and the other is role of giving people comfort. And when it comes to whether AI can replace a higher being in religion, I would say no for now, at least. But at the same time, people are starting to open up to AI and share their honest thoughts. In that sense, AI is beginning to play a similar role to religion by giving people comfort and even more emotional support. So I also think this is happening because AI is so easy to access and feels anonymous. And now if you have something on your mind, you don't even have to wait until Sunday service. You just can like ask AI right away. And no matter how dark or personal your confession is, you feel safe knowing that your secret stays with you and AI. On top of that, as a user, you can actually customize AI to respond in the way that you want. So in some cases, people might even get the answers they're hoping to hear about their concerns. So if the goal is simply to find a peace of mind, AI definitely feels easier to access or even better than opening up to other person.
Yeah, I think you made a great point about how it's so accessible and it's so, you don't have to wait, you don't have to go to church. You can just do it just from your computer and during your daily, while you're doing your daily stuff. So it is a fascinating shift, especially as technology begins to engage with people's inner thoughts and beliefs. And it shows how AI is evolving from a tool into something more emotionally interactive. And building on that, a new format is also gaining traction. So Cheska, what exactly are cyber confessionals?
Yeah, so this was something extremely interesting and new for me. And basically, it's a live stream of an empty room, and users can walk in, online, and then they would anonymously in the chat leave their confessions. Apparently in China, it is so popular that it's getting up to about 50 million views. And I think this kind of hits exactly the points that Kyle talked about, because it is an empty room. There's nobody to judge you. So people come with varying degree of confessions. Some are even as casual as, oh, I bought this fake, luxury brand bag because I wanted to sort of brag to my friends or out of vanity. But confessions do get a little heavy too. Some people would say, oh, I paid off my debt with my parents' insurance money, or like something very heavy, like I made this really heavy mistake or accident to someone that I just cannot confess. So I think it shows the nature of human to want to confess to a place where they won't be judged. But at the same time, it is interesting because now we're crossing into this realm of how far AI could actually allow people to use this anonymity and emotional release. So I think this is a very interesting discussion that keeps going on.
So I guess it does sound like a quick fix in a way.
Yeah.
It's so easy to do that.
Quick, instant, and also no judgment because there's no real figure on the other side that is listening. So I feel like people feel much more safe to pour their hearts out, knowing that they won't be judged by any real person. Yeah.
Right. So, this highlights how younger generations are redefining the idea of confession and emotional release. And it now seems less about tradition, more about accessibility and staying anonymous. So naturally, this raises a bigger question about tradition versus change. So how are religious communities responding to this, Kyle?
Religious communities are actively debating how to respond to this shift. On one hand, there's a growing concern that if religious institutions take the lead in adapting AI, it could eventually reduce the role of human religious leaders. But on the other hand, some argue that this change is unavoidable. With declining interest in religion, especially among younger generations, many communities are now considering AI as a way to reconnect with people. In that sense, AI is being explored as a tool to make religious teaching more accessible and engaging. So at its core, the debate comes down to this, whether to preserve the intangible values that religion has carried for centuries or to adapt to the current reality in order to stay relevant.
Right, so in a way it reflects an effort to stay relevant in a rapidly changing world, but at the same time, not everyone is fully on board. So how do some people feel about AI giving spiritual guidance, Cheska?
So this is also another interesting discussion, but to bring my own perspective a little bit here, as a Catholic, we do have something called the sacrament of confession. So in some religion like Catholic, there is an actually system of confession, and it's basically you walk into a room where you're seated and you have a screen door, and the priest is sitting on the other side. So you don't really actually get to see the priest in person, but you walk in, talk about your sins and confession. So religion has created that, but now it's moving into cyberspace and now AI is taking over. So now let's take a look at the screen to see the survey of how people actually think about this change. So according to a survey last year done by a US Christian research group, about 30% of people said they trust AI spiritual guidance as much as the guidance from a pastor. But the number was even higher for younger generation, so even 39% for Gen Z and 40% for millennials. But I think it's also no surprise that this is raising some concerns because within the Catholic Church, there are discussions going on about how much and what kind of ethical guidelines there should be when it comes to using AI to create, sermons and mass. And even like the Pope Leo XIV has also cautioned relying on AI to prepare for mass, as AI and religion is such a tricky combination. I mean, how far can you use without actually tainting the integrity of religion? I think that's a big question. Yeah.
I agree. So, that is a striking divide. On one hand, a growing number of people are placing real trust in AI for something as personal as spiritual guidance, especially among the younger generations. But at the same time, there's clear caution from religious leaders who are wary of where that reliance could lead. And that's why we also wanted to hear directly from our viewers. So we ran a poll on the IDI News YouTube channel asking, would you be willing to consult AI about your personal problems instead of a religious figure? And here's what the results showed. So more than half of respondents, 55%, said they would be willing to consult AI about their personal problems instead of turning to a religious figure such as a priest, pastor, or monk, while 45% said they would not. So that's a pretty telling split. AI is clearly gaining ground as a source of guidance, but there's still a significant number of people who prefer that human connection and trust that comes with traditional religious figures. And to gain a more in-depth perspective, we're going to speak with an expert on this evolving intersection of technology and spirituality. And that conversation is coming out right after a break, so don't go anywhere.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search out Channel Arirang News. Click Posts and cast your vote in the poll. Make a new type of news with us.
Joining us today is Professor Park Jung, who teaches at KAIST Graduate School of Cultural Technology. Hello, Professor. Thank you so much for connecting with us today.
Hello, good morning. Thanks for having me.
Good morning. So, Professor, have you personally used AI for advice? And what is your take on the rise of AI in religious practices?
Yeah, so when these AI chatbots were beginning to pop up, I did ask some deep questions myself, mostly for fun, but also because I wanted to test how those machines would answer questions on the meaning of life or what lies in the future for me. But I always known they were simply making up sentences based on algorithms by picking and choosing words from the data that had been fed without any real understanding of the context. But I do understand the lure of such machines too, right? Because we are always curious about our future, and we always search for conversation partners who understand us and we can trust enough to unload, our sense of guilt over shortcomings. And one of the roles of religion has been exactly that. So some people may be hoping that AI can also play that role conveniently in your smartphone and cute little robots.
Oh, and then what aspects of religion do you think AI could replace?
Yeah, so can AI really replace religion? That's a deep question. So when AI talks back to you, it feels kind of mystical, doesn't it? And people have, historically speaking, thought that these automata or automatic machines were enabled by divine or supernatural powers. So, but the AI and robots that recite religious texts or do ceremonial actions like joining your palms, in Buddhism, do so because we made them do it using algorithms. So therein lies the crucial difference. We respect religious leaders because of the stories of them overcoming hardships, like epic hunger and unjust persecution. Life is difficult, and religion gives us comfort because we believe they understand us and give us hope and practical advices, which we need plenty of. And interestingly, Pope Leo agrees with me when he recently told the priests not to write homilies or weekly sermons using AI. Obviously, the priests were doing it all over the world as well. And his reasoning was that, religious message can only come from real human experience. So at the moment, AI and religion could play a role in making going to churches and temples more fun and kind of fun to connect with other people. But beyond that, it is not really easy at the moment to envision replacing religion in an essential way, which will have to foster some more discussions.
Thank you for participating in this fascinating and quite difficult discussion. The last question is, what should users and people and developers be aware of when using AI to mold with religion?
Yeah, so first for the consumers, if they're looking for a truly deep, caring human message, you have to know that AI is ultimately unlikely to be able to do that because they don't possess human experience. And also we talked about the sanctity of confession. So even though those chat sessions seem secure and safe, in general, there are so many reports of notorious privacy violations in the end. So you really have to be careful as you pursue those things. As for the developers, I know it can also be a fun and profitable business for them, but the numerous reports of mental health problems, sometimes with dire consequences, from those taking those chatbots too seriously are actually a warning sign, which means that we actually have to put in more effort into educating people of the risks. But it's also worrying that these developers may not have enough expertise themselves. So technology is like that in any kind of field. It's fun, helpful in some ways, and it works on people, but you have to know the fundamental principles of how they work to understand them and use them safely. And that was why it was really good to hear you guys banter a few minutes ago about having a balance between these new tech and also your own thoughts and principles. And I think that's the prudent way to go.
Right. I mean, it's clear that there are so many layers to this. So as usual, thank you so much for sharing your insight with us today, Professor.
Thank you. It's nice talking to you.
Thank you.
So we've just heard from a professor of cultural technology on the rise of AI in religious practices, how it's reshaping the way we experience faith, and what religion might look like in an AI-driven future. It certainly gives us a lot to think about, especially as technology moves deeper into more personal spaces. But this also raises a more fundamental question. And to close off our discussion today, so is it really okay to rely on AI in deeply emotional and also spiritual areas, Kyle?
Oh, it's a tricky question, but personally, I don't think it's entirely okay to rely on AI in deeply emotional or spiritual areas. Because at the end of the day, AI doesn't truly feel or emotionally connect with you. It simply generates responses based on patterns and context. Also, as natural language processing becomes more advanced, AI can actually sound very human. And that can create the illusion that it understands or empathizes with you. In fact, I think a lot of people are actually falling into that misunderstanding. But in reality, AI isn't actually understanding your emotions. It's just producing the most appropriate responses for the situation. So while it can be helpful for some extent, but I don't think it's something we should completely rely on.
Right. I mean, so that concern really speaks to something deeper, the value of genuine human connection, especially in moments of vulnerability. It also highlights how convenience and staying anonymous can sometimes come at a cost. So at the same time, there are also broader concerns emerging around the impact of AI on religion itself. So could AI push human religious figures aside or even spread misinformation within communities?
I think all the questions we're asking today are just brilliant questions that have such difficult answers. But if you were to have asked me this question about just a few years ago, when AI first came out, my answer would have been a hard no, because I thought religion is one area that AI just could not cross. But what we've talked about today and what we're seeing today kind of sheds a different light on how far AI is going in terms of religion and how people actually interact with AI in the realm of religion. I am not quite sure if it can actually replace religious figures, but I think the more important and concerning part is the fact that some people can actually use AI for misinformation and false doctrines, because I think religion is a very powerful emotional tool. As our professor talked about, people rely on it to find comfort, to find assurance. So I do hope that we find a very, very good balance in terms of using AI so that people can access religion more easily, not completely replace it, and use it in a proper and more sort of comforting and spiritual way. Yeah.
I think it's like a common theme when we talk about AI is that it's good as a tool.
Yes.
But it's with religion, I think, as you said, it's so hard to find, or our professor said as well, so it's hard to find people that are able to fully regulate it as well. So for you, you're a Catholic.
Yes.
Is there an area that you would be willing to use AI?
Yes, so I would use AI to summarize the Bible
That's a good one.
It's so long.
That is a good one.
Like those are the areas that you could use the AI for, but how you understand the Bible and how you sort of interpret or at least pray or practice, I should be a very personal experience.
I agree.
So I think that's about as far as AI can enter my life.
I see, I see. So as AI continues to evolve, it's clear it's not just changing how we live, but also how we seek meaning and connection. So whether it becomes a tool that supports faith or something that challenges it, the human element remains at the core. And it'll be interesting to see how this intersection of tech and belief goes next. And that brings us to the end of today's episode of News Generation. But News Gen will be back tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Korea time with more stories and discussions. So big thanks to Kyle.
Thanks for having me. I had so much fun.
So good to have you, and also Cheska.
Pleasure's always mine. Thank you.
And to our viewers, thank you so much for watching. And maybe next time your guidance will come from an algorithm. We are
News Generation.